Hi, welcome to Birthing at Home, a podcast. I'm Elsie, your host. I'm a home birth mum of 2 little boys, I'm a mental health nurse, a home birth advocate broadly, but also more specifically in the state of Victoria, and I'm an ex-student midwife. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people who are the traditional custodians of the land I'm recording on in Melbourne, Australia. I would also like to acknowledge that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples have been birthing at home on country for tens of thousands of years prior to the British invasion and acknowledge that sovereignty has never been ceded. Finally, after 3.5 years, I get to share my home birth stories in episode 16 of the podcast. I'm so grateful for my midwife friend Hannah, who I studied with, was able to chat with me. In April 2020, I had my first baby, Murphy, at home, who was 4.55 kilos, by the way, which is 10 pounds. And in June this year, in 2023, I had his little 4.61 kilo brother, Frankie, at home after his waters broke on his gestate and I didn't start labour for almost 2 days. I have been approved to share a video form of the lead up to Frankie's birth and his birth, so be sure to check that out on Instagram if you'd like. This will be the last episode for 2023, but I'm very excited to see what 2024 has in store for Birthing at Home, a podcast, and I'm so grateful for all of the support that I've already received in the past 3 months. Enjoy this episode, and I'll be talking to you all very, very soon. Hi everyone, it's Elsie here. I'm so excited because tonight I'm sharing my 2 home birth stories and my friend from uni and midwife friend Hannah on the Sunshine. Oh, are you on the Sunshine Coast now, Hannah?
I am on the Sunshine Coast, that's correct.
Yeah. Hannah is going to chat with me, so hopefully the conversation flows a little better.
Woohoo! I'm so excited to be here to have this conversation with you and help you share your stories.
Yeah, I was just saying to Hannah that back in 2020 when I had my first son, Murphy, I reached out to another podcast to try and share my story because, you know, first-time mums having home births isn't very common, and I wasn't able to share it. And so basically I've been sitting on these stories for 3.5 years because Murphy's now 3.5 years old, and I had my second home birth in June this year as well, in 2023. So I'm not sure how much you know of my stories, Hannah. Obviously, we're friends and we've followed each other's lives for the past however many years.
Oh, it's a while now.
Quite a while. Like we started... Yeah. We started uni in 2014.
It's 9 years, isn't it? Yeah, it'd be 9 years. Holy moly.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
It makes me feel old.
And Hannah has a lovely little girl called Lani as well. So she understands mum life and midwifery life and the amazing maternity system we have in Australia. Heavy sarcasm if you couldn't detect that. Anyway, I guess reflecting on our time back at uni, Hannah, that's the first time I ever learned about home birth. When I finished high school, I thought I'll rock up to uni. I'll go deliver babies. I sucked at biology in school. I didn't like biology. I didn't want to be a nurse. I wanted to be a midwife. And I can't actually remember the first time I actually learnt about home birth, but I've said it before, like we had some amazing teachers, Hannah and I.
I reckon it would have been in Rachel Reid's class, hey? Our first.
Probably Rachel Reid.
Absolute legend.
Legend. But I had we had a lot of other amazing tutors as well that were really heavily involved in home birth advocacy. And I guess I became kind of fascinated with the maternity system. And in the episode that I did with Amy, who was also one of our cohort, Hannah and I, and I just came to learn how, I guess, how different, I mean, before university, before midwifery, I honestly had no idea about birth. I was super freshly 18. Like no one, I'd never had the sex talk. I'd obviously been in relationships and stuff, but it was all through my own experiments, I guess. Like that had never been discussed with me. We definitely didn't learn about pregnant, like I guess how to not be pregnant, but never about birth or anything. So like, you know, rocking up to university and learning about all of these amazing things, it really opened my world. But then, you know, at USC where we weren't allowed to follow women that were home birthing. So I guess it, to me, became this kind of secret.
It's almost like a secret society in a way, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And we had all these tutors that were in the space, but we couldn't learn about it in terms of the practical experience.
Yeah, like you'd learn about it in like the research that you were reading and assessments, and, you know, always comparing how amazing the Netherlands is and how the rate of home birth in the Netherlands is so high. But I only was exposed to hospital births, and I am pretty sure I saw like every amount of intervention there was, and I only saw probably like 15 births.
Yeah.
And so only within those 15 births I saw all of this, and I, you know, I'd be on a high because, I mean, like the birth of a baby is obviously incredible, but it just, like, something just didn't line up, and eventually I burnt myself out for feeling so passionate about it. And
which is so easy to do.
Yeah.
Especially as a student. It's such a juggling act. You did well.
Yeah. Well, I got to the end of my third year, and then, I was like, what am I going to do with my life? And I was told I would be more employable if I did nursing. So I chose to drop the midwifery and stuck with the nursing. And here we are, 6 or so years later, and I'm a mental health nurse. I work in various different settings, but usually in forensics. Currently, I just got off maternity leave, so I am doing a bit of time in the youth crisis team here in the northwestern suburbs of Melbourne. I feel like that's quite a journey in itself, I guess. You've
done a lot to get to where you are, for sure. Do you feel as though there was like a point in that journey, or even prior to falling pregnant, that you had an inkling that you might birth outside the system because of what you'd seen?
I think I wanted to, and I guess a lot of the great resources that are available today, they weren't like published, when we were at uni. Like I remember one of the women that I did the follow through with, she gifted me Ina May Gaskin's Guide to Childbirth, and I remember her giving it to me and being like, this is a weird gift because I'm not pregnant, I'm a student, because there's Ina May has like another like Spiritual Midwifery,
which is another good book.
Another good book, but I was just like so kind and generous, but I just remember being like, when am I going to read this? Like I'm not having a baby right now. And I kept that book, and I did not read it until I was pregnant with Murphy. And I think, I knew that I wanted continuity of care, and I knew that I wanted a private midwife. That's how much I knew. In Victoria, I didn't know how it kind of like differed. So, I was a bit out of my depth because I'd studied in Queensland. I knew a lot about the maternity system back then in Queensland, but not so much in Victoria. So I remember going to a like midwifery group clinic thing here in Melbourne and sitting down with the midwife, and she's like, oh, well, do you want to have a home birth? And I actually was a bit like, oh my gosh, I can have this experience now. You know, the thing that I've learnt about for years, that can be my experience too. But it was also a bit like taking ownership of your decision, because I think we've all been, victims of the birth culture in Australia. And so even though I'd learned all of these things, I still had, I guess, this fear that like, what if I can't do it? You know?
Oh, I so understand that.
Yeah.
Like I had to work really hard to get out of my own head for Lani's birth. Like even right to the point where I was like, about to push her out.
Yeah.
I was so like switching between the midwife brain who's only ever worked in the system and the brain that was my mum brain that I like was trying to get to trust the process. So I so understand that. It's challenging.
Yeah. This is like a random side note, but Hannah, were you born at home?
I wasn't actually. So I was a stubborn little bubba who my mum was in like I suppose the MGP of our day being born. Mum had driven an hour and a half, I think, to that hospital that offered that service. But I was 2.5 weeks overdue and ended up in a Caesar. But my mum then went on to have 2 home births, which the more I unpack with her were probably actually 2 free births because she had birth workers. She had the likes of Jenny Blythe there, which was amazing. So no, but my upbringing was all very like home birth, alternative, that kind of stuff. So for me, it wasn't my first exposure like you when I went to uni. So
I remember. I remembered something. I was like, Hannah. There's something about Hannah and home birth.
No, I was the stubborn firstborn, but the fact that mum then backed it up, I suppose, and went from having a cesarean, and back in that day it was like once a cesarean, always a cesarean kind of mentality. So she was very much stuck it to the system, I suppose. She even actually engaged with a bit of hospital care for my brother, but signed a DMA and then went and had him at my uncle's house a few hours later. So
amazing. Amazing.
She's pretty badass.
I just remembered that another way that home birth was kind of exposed to me was through my now husband. And I'm not sure at what point I learnt this, but my husband is Dutch and he was born at home. So I guess home birth was probably always in my future somehow.
Which I think is amazing because I know talking with a lot of women, a lot of the time the biggest hurdle is the partner. Like the women are so committed in it, but their partners are in fear of home birth for whatever reason, and therefore they decide not to do it. So I remember thinking as well when you were talking to Amy about how her partner was pretty on board for it, and I was like, oh, all these people, like it's such a it's awesome to have supportive partners that are almost more on board with it.
Well, in my situation, I remember going home or whatever from that initial appointment with the midwife, and saying to Kun, oh, well, like, should we have a home birth or, should I go to hospital? And my husband was kind of like, is that even an actual question, Elsie? Because I'm pretty sure we're having a home birth. And how many men / partners are there out there in Australia that are, even more passionate about their, female partner having a home birth? Like,
Yeah.
I feel very lucky for that. I guess I also went in with the knowledge that I didn't want the glucose tolerance test. And, back in the end of 2019, pre-COVID, I don't actually remember there being any issues. I had normal scans and, I was excited. It was my first pregnancy. So I was like, well, this is how pregnancy goes. You get the things. I don't think free birth had ever occurred to me. I remember one of my follow through women had what she called an accidental home birth. And now when I reflect on that, I'm pretty sure she was always going to be free birthing.
Yeah.
And I remember getting the message and being so disappointed that I missed her birth. But now that I I've heard all these free birth stories and obviously I've had home births, I can totally imagine that that's what she may have been doing on purpose. But I hadn't heard of wild pregnancy. So I guess, even though I had learned all of these amazing things and had all of these experiences, there was still plenty of things that I did not know and had not heard of. And so when it came to the glucose tolerance test, I thought I could say no. Everybody says,
yep,
you can decline. And well, everybody from my experience had, said, oh, you can decline the GTT. And I had a wonderful primary midwife, but before we started this recording, Hannah, I was, reflecting on the fact that because home birth midwives, compared to any other midwife, is such a small proportion, and because it's so heavily monitored.
Yeah. You almost got a bit of a target on your back sometimes.
Yeah, it means that it's such a hard system for midwives to work in for their full scope of practice, and to, I guess, it sometimes provide that really, really true 100% woman-centered care. Because what ended up happening was that I had no risk factors apart from it being my first pregnancy. Was that I was told that if I wanted a home birth, I had to have the glucose tolerance test. And so I was like, what the fuck? Everybody told me that I could say no.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you mean?
Out of interest, do you know whether or not that would have changed? Would they have been more accepting of your ability to decline the test if you were going to be birthing in the hospital?
That's a great question. I actually have no idea.
Because I'd be intrigued to see whether or not they would have been more willing to partnering with women's for decision making if you were birthing in the hospital. Because I think realistically, from my perspective, I would think about their fear potentially is that a big baby gets stuck at home, and what?
Yeah.
So interesting. That's so sad though.
Yeah, and all of this was happening. So Murphy was born at the endish of April, and you get the GTT at 28, 30 weeks or something?
Yeah, 26 to 28.
So I think all of this was happening just as COVID was spreading word.
Yeah.
And so there was already so much unknown about, well, what the heck is coronavirus? And
that panic.
people were saying oh, the borders are going to close, and I was like, what rubbish! That's just the media fear mongering. That's never going to happen.
Yeah, I so remember that. Yeah.
And so to have this extra thing, and I remember one of the head midwives called me, and it was really I can't, it was over 3.5 years ago now. I can't actually remember it, but I remember how it felt, and I felt like really invalidated. I was like, I will sign whatever you want me to sign to say that this is 100% my decision. I do not want the GTT. Anyway, I ended up having this stupid GTT, and I remember I was so pissed off about, having to go sit in that stupid chair. And
I actually think I remember like talking to you at the time that happened.
Yeah, probably. I was
you were so mad,
so
and I was mad for you.
And I remember where I got it done, there was only like 1 hour parking or something. And I remember asking the nurse like if I could go move my car because, I didn't want a parking fine. There was literally no other parking in the area. And she was so frazzled. And I was like, well, I'm going to go move my car because if I don't, I'm going to get a parking ticket. She's like, oh, but like if you move. And I was like, what?
They're so pedantic about it. Hey, I remember they even got funny about me going up and going to the toilet, and I was like, oh my Lord, you've got a pregnant woman. Like, let me walk around the corner to the toilets at the back of your block.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was so intense.
And I hate needles. I've always been a very well person. I've never been in hospital before, apart from as a student. I've always been a healthy, well person. So, obviously I've had like my blood tests before and stuff, but to have to do that like 3 times in a row and then drink that drink and then also just fundamentally disagree with the entire thing, it was so crap. So imagine my surprise when the test results come back and they're all messed up because the comment at the bottom, I'm sure I have like the pathology report somewhere still. The comment at the bottom was like, this is not a pregnant woman's. This is not even like, this doesn't make sense. Like these results don't make sense. And as the, head pathologist or whoever that's escalated to, I think it should be retested because these test results don't make sense. Like that's not how a normal human body would respond with gestational diabetes or just without it. And I was like, and then they asked me to do it again. And I was like, I am not doing it again.
Were they just low or were they just all over the place?
It was just messy. I wonder if I have it. I think I have it digitally somewhere.
Sorry, side note, my midwife brain being like,
yeah, I'll see if I can find it. I'll send it to you. But they asked me to do it again and I was like, I am not doing it again. And I guess because I had already agreed, I don't know, they fought me less on that. I had to finger prick myself for a week or whatever. And I was working in a busy mental health hospital here in Melbourne, and obviously being pregnant and a nurse like on the ward, like who the hell has time to prick their fingers? And when there was chocolate in the nurse's station, I was bloody eating that chocolate.
Oh, 100%.
And then I'd be like, oh shit, I've got to like check my stupid blood sugars. It was just like such a drama that did not need to be a drama.
Wow.
It was, I think, like with Murphy, that was pretty much my only hiccup. Like, I think everything else was fine. I did hypnobirthing with my husband, like a weekend course, and that was amazing. Like, I obviously already knew so much, but like, it was so helpful for Kun. And
I found the same with Damien. We did one too with ex-colleague. And I knew a lot about it, but for him it was really good because like he didn't want to be listening to me necessarily waffle on about it all or / wouldn't take it in. So
yeah.
So it gave them that bit of independence, I suppose, in their education.
Yeah. And like in that hypnobirthing, and I remember we did one antenatal class as well. We were the only home birthers. There was no other home birthers. So I guess, to be relatively young, I guess, in the, generally people are giving birth, more women give birth in their late 20s, early mid-30s or whatever these days. But at the time I was only like mid-early 20s. So to be the only couple and the youngest couple in the room home birthing, it was also quite isolating. Like I had actually I only realized this not long ago, but like I didn't know anybody that had, not knowingly, that had home birth before. So
Yeah.
I was looking before we chatted to see like my history in the home birth Australia group. And that's what my community was, like this group on Facebook, because I didn't know anybody else. Like even though I had a private midwife and I went to a couple of social things or whatever, like we were the only home birthers.
Even in
and then
the private
COVID just made that worse. Pardon?
Even in the private practice of like amongst the midwives?
In the group that I went to, yes. And I remember postnatally, because of COVID, like there was no mothers groups or anything like that, but they connected us with other mums that had babies around the same time. And I'm pretty sure like one or two of the mums that were in that group were meant to have home births, but like for whatever reason didn't end up having home births.
Wow.
But it just like there just wasn't, I just didn't have the community that I have definitely now, like, especially with the podcast, obviously. I know heaps of people that have had home births now.
Do you feel as though that impacted your thoughts, feelings, etc., leading up to birth, not having like a physical community around you to like, I don't know, share stories or just know that they were there?
Yeah, I think it probably affected me more postnatally. I think like antenatally and labour, I felt like, from everything that I'd done, I was nervous, obviously, because
naturally,
like it's like, it's labour and birth. Like I was excited, but I was nervous, especially first time round. I had also, asked my mum to, like, if she wanted to come and, watch her first grandchild be born. And like with home birth, that's something you can do. You can invite whoever you want into your birth
have the whole
space.
village there if you want.
You could have the whole village. And unfortunately, like I guess most women, I guess, mum just like I was in induction, my brother was in induction, like she just, I think home birth was too big of a step for her, and it ended up being that she said that she didn't want to be there. So I think after that kind of experience, I probably just focused on myself more, and I just focused on what I did have. And especially when COVID started impacting things, I was like, well, it's, I was meant to actually have a student midwife there. So I had a student come to some of the antenatals and stuff, but because of COVID, she went back to Tasmania before she basically wouldn't have been able to get back home. So I had one less support person.
Big impacts for you.
Yeah. And the birth with Murphy, it's hard to think about now because I didn't realize that I had some things that I didn't really like about my birth experience with Murphy until I had Frankie, 4 months ago. The birth with Murphy, was like, I was so excited. I was also in such denial it was happening. I was 41 plus 5. Also with COVID, like I wasn't going to be allowed a home birth past 42 weeks. So I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do?
Wow. Was that just purely in COVID times that they didn't let you go beyond that point?
Yeah, I'm not sure what it is now, but then, yeah, it was 42 and you would have to go to hospital.
Yeah, wow, that would have played so heavily on my mind.
Yeah, because like, what am I going to do?
Yeah, you've like geared yourself
what
up
can I
for
do?
this.
I did accept like a stretch and sweep at like 41 maybe, but the midwife said that my cervix was so closed that like she couldn't do anything. So
yeah.
I accepted it, but she wasn't able to do it. I declined. I don't think I declined, but I said to my midwife, like, you can talk about induction. I am not being induced. You are not inducing me. If you need to tick the box to say that you've had the spiel, go for it. But like, I'm not having an induction. So I really was grateful that she acknowledged or rather respected that. But yeah, it was so stressful. But when I did go into labor, it was just like this kind of like back pain with Murphy, and in the late afternoon, and then I remember messaging the midwife and being like, oh, like this might be it, might not. And she said, okay, well, I'll have my dinner and I'll go to bed and we'll see what happens. And then, like at 3 o'clock or something in the morning, I, as many of us do, was like vomiting while sitting on the toilet, and all of the really delightful
all the
things.
glory.
The glory.
Had you been awake this whole time? Like,
yeah. I'd been like, So I think like the back ache kind of thing started at like 6-ish, but I probably had like my first like proper contraction maybe, or like what you could call a contraction probably around 8 or so. Yeah. And I remember telling myself, well, you're only allowed the TENS machine at midnight. If this is still happening at midnight, then you're allowed the TENS machine.
Like bargaining with yourself.
Yeah. But I was in such denial that it was happening.
Yeah.
Because, I knew that I wouldn't give birth on my estimated date. I knew I was more likely to go over as a first-time mum. But like that was just, it's a cruel game, those estimated due dates.
So agree. Like I was like, oh, I'm going to go. I had so psyched myself up that I was going to be like 42 weeks and ready to sign whatever I needed to sign to keep going, that kind of thing. And same kind of thing. I was like, nah, denial. My waters broke at 38 and 6 and 38 and 5 and I had Lani at 38 and 6. And I was like, so shocked that it happened, because I was like, I'm a first-time mum. Like, I would be 42 weeks. What happened? Like, you came before you, like, what?
Yeah.
And it was funny because my midwife had actually predicted that, which is, as you know, someone that we went to school with. She was like, nah, you're not going to go over due. And I was like, nah, I'm a first-time mum, I will. She's like, nah, you won't. You're too active. And so many people had actually said that to me. So it was funny to see that it happened. So anyway, sorry, side detour.
No. That's funny because like I finished work at probably like 37, 38 weeks, and I feel like somebody, like one of like the midwives or somebody that I said was like, oh, maybe it dragged out because I had been so active because I'd been working so much.
Oh, the complete flip. How interesting.
Yeah, the complete opposite. But I don't even remember how I spent those last weeks. Like I remember laying in bed with Kun on the weekend before Murphy was born, and I remember actually speaking, saying, this is the last weekend, like no matter what happens, this is the last weekend that it will just be you and me. And such a weird feeling.
It is, hey. I remember going to bed after, because my waters broke first. Yeah. And I remember going to bed that night and saying to my partner, this is the last time it's just you and I. Like, this baby's. I had like period cramps happening by that stage, so I knew that labour was coming. But I was like, it's so weird that like that's your last night and you know it, like your last weekend, or it's crazy.
Yeah, you can almost feel like chapter 2 being written on the page. Like,
yes, that's such a good way to say it.
Yeah. And then Murphy, I think it was pretty uneventful. It was just like he ended up being a pretty big baby and like first time mum. It just took a while. I think I was like pushing for like 2 hours. Like,
you had to work hard.
I had to work hard. I was freaking exhausted.
Yeah.
He ended up being born at 11:15 or so the next morning. And like the last, like whatever it was, I still don't know. I mean, I'm the birthing woman. I have no freaking idea whether it was a fatty dystocia, a body dystocia, a shoulder dystocia. I've heard it called all three things. He was just a big baby. He was 4.55 kilos, which I think is smack on 10 pounds. And he was just a chunky guy. I had a very, very small second degree tear, probably because he was sitting there for almost 2 hours. It could have been worse, but he, for whatever reason, he needed a little bit of extra help to be born, and I think that's where it all went wrong, to be honest. That really, really scared me. I had also heard the second midwife come in and say something about an ambulance. And I remember then going into like student midwife brain and being like, well, if they're talking about ambulance, does that mean that like it's not going to happen for me? Like I'm going to have to go into hospital? Like what's wrong? Like I feel like I've been pushing it for a while. I know I've been pushing for a while. Like what's happening? And like now that I, have had the two experiences, my primary midwife was fantastic. I have no complaints. She is still a good friend. But I feel like working in a system because, you have to play the game as like a private midwife. And if you want to, be treated with respect, I guess, in hospitals, sometimes that means you have to work, like do some hours in the hospital. Like that's how, you get your admitting rights or whatever, however they get it. And, that was kind of sold to me as like, oh, well, the midwives in our place also do shifts in the hospital, so they're really well trained with emergency procedures. And at the time I was like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But now, like being able to reflect on that he needed this help or whatever, he needed it or didn't need it did happen, where, she did whatever maneuver to get him out and then he wasn't breathing. And now it's only recently that I've learned about like this phenomenon of like transition, like to life. I don't know, whatever you call it.
Time. Yeah.
Giving
My
them time.
Similar, but not minus the dystocia kind of thing. But like a second midwife not giving Lani time to transition. And I totally empathize with you from the perspective of I felt like I robbed Lani because she was like clamp cut, taken over to the resus.
Yeah.
And like, as they all tend to do, screamed on her way over. But like, she's a quiet baby. Like in terms of like, she just observes and she was fine. And like,
Yeah.
it's hard. And it's,
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to your comment about the second midwife saying about the ambulance. That would have been so hard to hear as the woman pushing in that in that state of being so close to meeting your baby, hearing someone go, oh, do we need an ambulance? Like your brain would have flicked into like fight or flight and like adrenaline and all that kind of stuff. And that just, that's so hard.
And like I can see it all playing out now, the fact that she said that probably took me longer to push, needed help to push because suddenly like the hormones and whatever that are meant to be doing this thing, aren't doing it so well anymore because like now fear has come into the picture.
Yeah, and that bit of self-doubt too.
The self-doubt, like what are they not telling me, like what's happening? And then, Murphy was like placed on my chest. It was like just on the floor. I had a birth pool, but it was determined that like the birth pool was kind of like slowing me down a bit or something. And so super ironically, I gave birth on my back, which is so funny because like, you hear so much about like birthing on your back in hospital. Well, I gave birth on my back at home. And like, so Murphy was like placed on my chest and I have the video. So I know exactly what happened. And like, I'm like rubbing and I'm like not stressed. I'm like, oh, I've seen babies be born. I know that they need time. Like I was rubbing him. I was like, come on, Murphy. And, then the second midwife's come in and like clamped the cord. He's not breathing. He's not crying at this point. Yeah, but he is still attached to the cord. But she clamps it, goes and gets the resus stuff, brings it over, and by the time she's unwrapped all of the stuff and put it on his face, he's breathing. But like the cord, my problem has always been the cord was never cut. If you're gonna clamp it, cut it as fucking well. But anyway, this podcast is about empowerment. That was very frustrating to me. I'd been pushing.
To feel that though too, like that's still valid and still part of your journey. As frustrating as it is.
I because I'd been pushing and because of everything, like now that I can see it all play out, I can see that I was probably never going to give birth to that placenta by myself. I had just been scared, frightened, made to feel that like, my baby almost was dead, essentially. That's how it felt. Like
you're in a state of vulnerability and fear, which is not conducive with a physiological birth of a placenta.
No. So I had the Synto. I really, really hate needles. So, whatever. I had the Synto. Anyway, my breastfeeding journey was okay. It was hard at the start. I think for many or most women, it's hard at the start, but I sort of attribute it also to that birth, that end birth experience, because Murphy couldn't actually turn his head one way for ages. We had to go to lots of osteo appointments to loosen up the muscles or whatever in his neck. And so we had some breastfeeding trouble in the beginning, but like otherwise, I was on a high. I was like, I've had my home birth. Like I am amazing. This is amazing. Despite all of that stuff that I didn't want, amazing. But it wasn't until I've had this experience with Frankie in June that I'm like, whoa, I definitely have preferred the experience with Frankie. Admittedly, I probably went into Frankie's like birth less prepared, I guess. I was like, oh, I've done hypnobirthing before, so I don't need to do it again. I've read all the books, so I don't really need to read them again. I was like, I've given birth. Why would I need to
you may not have
myself?
Yeah. So, but like from the perspective, or my perspective, yeah, you may not have felt like you've done all the preparation, but your preparation has come from your previous birth and your lived experiences and that journey and the prep that you did for Murphy. Like, it's not that you came in underprepared. It's just you didn't have to do a lot of work to feel prepared.
Yeah, I guess. Like, looking back though, I'm like, was I even doing the horse's breath? Like, how was I breathing? It's like, maybe I should have like touched up on like the breathing skills required, because I was like, I'm pretty sure Mother Nature is like such a trickster, because the way that I remember Murphy's birth, I remember those last moments, it being like the most excruciating pain I could ever have felt in my entire life. But obviously, because, you know, other people were involved, like it was physically happening to me, like my body wasn't doing it. And like, with Frankie, I think that like in some ways I was a little bit less controlled, and I think maybe if I had have, you know, touched up on some of those skills, maybe because I've walked away from Frankie's birth being like, that was the most empowering experience that I could ever have in my entire life. However, it really hurt, and I wish so bad. I'm pretty sure I'm done at this stage. Like, 2 children is me. I'm going to get involved with birth somehow else, but I don't want to do it again.
You don't want to challenge yourself to a 5 kilo baby?
No, because Frankie was even bigger. Frankie was 4.6 kilos. But like, yeah, I just think that, like if I had been a bit more, I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, it's all hindsight, right? But we also had started, like, as an interesting fact is that 2022 was absolutely crap for us, and so we moved to the Netherlands, which is, you know, when you see those memes and it's like, having a bad day, just book a trip to Europe. That's now looking back, that's very much how it felt. It didn't work out. I started off my maternity care with Frankie in the Netherlands. And so I started seeing a midwife in the Netherlands. It's all paid for. But you in the Netherlands, which is something that no one talks about, I think, is that in the Netherlands you do have to pay for private health. Like, everybody has private health insurance. You're not allowed to essentially be in the country, but like even as a citizen you must have private health insurance. And so ultimately it's the private health insurance that like pays for
all of
these services. It's just like that's incled.
I remember when you told me that, and I was like, whoa.
No one talks about that. Oh, it's free. Like, depending on what your concept of free is.
I'm paying for it somehow.
And I guess, in some ways that's like Medicare as well, but home birth isn't free here, so Medicare's definitely not paying for it. But it was such a different experience because like I saw the midwife, but you know, she spoke English, but not very good English really. And so I would bring Kun along to the appointments, but you know, this was up until 20 weeks. So we were in the Netherlands until 20 weeks. The scans were all covered. Like they test for different things in the Netherlands as well. So they were like, oh, like you've not had this immunization. I was like, yeah, but we don't immunize against that in Australia. And it was just like such a weird experience as well because home birth is so normalized. I feel like it had lost some of the magic of it. It just felt like, oh, home birth is normal. Like you're not special.
Yeah. You're not doing anything fabulous.
You're not it's like, it's
their standard care.
Yeah, Sally Smith over here has also had a home birth. Like, who cares? It's just normal birth, which is how it should be. But I feel like I also come from a more spiritual perspective as well. And I want it to be magic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I feel like everyone, especially now having had the experience with Frankie, I want that magic for other people, because
Birth is magic.
Yeah, it is magic. Like,
it's a magical thing.
Yeah. And so it was just strange. It was strange to, you know, be sitting there with the midwife in the Netherlands and then thinking about like all those times that I'd sat in the Tudor room on the Sunshine Coast learning about how amazing the midwifery care was in the Netherlands. And here I was being like, actually, I think I want to go home and just have my private midwife.
How interesting.
It's so strange, but a fun little add to my story.
Little like plot twist.
Plot twist. So we decided we were going to come back to Melbourne, and I was like, oh my God, I'm probably like 13 or 14 weeks. I was like, how am I going to find a private midwife? Like, I'm already like, you know, 13 or 14 weeks or so along. And anyway, I reached out to somebody. I decided to not go with my midwife doesn't work there anymore, but I decided to go with a different business, I guess. And so we Zoomed, you know, with a 9-hour time difference or whatever. And then when we came back to Melbourne, I went and met my midwife, and my pregnancy with Frankie was kind of pressured because we came back, we had no money. I was like, how am I even going to afford? Like, we have no money, like absolutely no money, no savings, no one's supporting us, no one's helping us. It's literally just the two of us and Murphy. We have to both work full time. I was doing overtime. I was doing extra, like work for a university. It's like, even if we save every single penny, we are not going to be able to afford this home birth. I do not know how this is going to work. But you would not catch me, you would probably not catch me dead in a hospital.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely respect.
You're getting it.
Absolutely respect that. Like, there are certain situations that, you know, where the hospital is appropriate, but I was like, there is no way I'm going to hospital. I am having this baby at home. And I asked a family member if they might lend us a little bit of the money just to, you know, help us out a little bit. And they declined. And I was telling this story to a friend, and the friend said, what if I loan you all the money? Oh my God, Hannah.
They're the kind of friends you need in your corner.
I will, like, I feel like that was like such a gift. Like, I never ever told her that story expecting that someone was going to loan us $6,000.
Yeah.
Like, because that's how much it costs. Like, just for the birth, $6,000. And, you know, if she didn't, we would have had to look at bank loans, where there's a will, there's a way. But having a friend just loan us the money, took so much pressure off. I still did work up until 38 weeks. I was so freaking pregnant. The one little issue I had was actually a scan. I declined the GTT without any issue this time, despite having had a big baby and despite some weird wording about dystocia.
Yeah, I was going to say, despite technically actually probably having more red flags compared to your first journey.
So I was grateful not to have to fight for that. I couldn't actually believe it. I just said, I don't want to. And it was never really brought up again. Amazing that I was like, that is what I wanted. Like, thank you.
Why couldn't they get this the first time?
So I went for a scan because, like I tell, I'm pretty sure all women at 20 weeks. This was in the Netherlands. I had a low-lying placenta. Surprise, surprise. I'm 20 freaking weeks pregnant. No shit, Sherlock.
Yeah. I actually was talking recently with some other private midwives where a lot of the time sonographers are making comments on ultrasound reports saying the placenta is low-lying, but the measurement doesn't actually match up with like guidelines. So that's an interesting point that's happening. So anyway, side note.
So annoying. I got the same with Murphy as well. So when I was told in the Netherlands low-lying, I was like, whatever. It's not. It's not going. Give me another 20 weeks, and it won't be. And because of this, I accepted, going to have a scan to check the placenta, and my midwife had written on the request form like only checking the placenta, like location, like nothing else. We just want to know that it's moved away from the os or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And when I rocked up, I just thought it was a non-issue. I was like, it's going to take like 10 minutes, like whatever. So I just, rocked up to work a bit late. Like that was my plan. I didn't bring Kun because I was like, it's going to be like a non-issue. Like it's like they'll just quickly be like, no, it was like such a drama. She was like, I can't do that. Like I can't do that. And I was like, what?
Why?
And then she was like, well, I'll have to call the doctor and like check that we're allowed to do it. And I'm like, but I'm saying you're allowed to do it. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah. And also it's not a doctor that did the request. It's my midwife.
Yeah, you're not the person that did the request. And she basically, without speaking the actual words, she basically told me that it was irresponsible, and how would I know if my baby wasn't dead, essentially.
I remember when your post popped up about that on the homebirth group, and I was like, oh.
And she made – so this was when I was like 30-something weeks pregnant, 36, 35, something like that maybe. And she was – so I go into the room – and she's like, oh, it's an internal one. And I was like, oh. And she's like, is that okay? And I was like, well, if that's the only way that you're going to get the result, then like I guess. And she's like, well, if you want to know the measurements, this is the only way. And I was like, okay. Like no respect for sexual assault history, no respect just like as a person. She didn't help me on the bed. She didn't help me off the bed. I was so freaking pregnant. I was by myself. It was a horrible, horrible experience.
But also just like general mannerisms. Like
Yeah. And I left that appointment and I just like cried all the way to work, and then just have to like go to work and like pretend, that everything's okay.
Yeah.
That I haven't just had something shoved up my vagina and then treated like shit.
Yeah. Told that I, am irresponsible for not getting my baby measured and they could be dead and
so 38 weeks rolled around. I was like keen to, finish up, and everybody was like, oh, it's second baby. It'll like happen quicker or happen sooner or like something, and, I didn't have any signs of labor. I was just so uncomfortable. Sleeping was uncomfortable. Like everything. I was like, I hate being pregnant. And then on 40 weeks, like at 4 a.m. in the morning, I went to the bathroom, and when I came back, I felt that my waters like broke. And now I know confidently that it was my waters, but at the time I was like, what the heck? Because with Murphy, my waters didn't break until I was like well in established labor. And
it's such a weird feeling when they break. I mean, I don't have anything to compare to now, but I was so like, was that my waters? Was it not? Like I was laying down at the time too. So it was just this weird feeling. And then I
Yeah.
was like, did I just pee myself, or is that my water? My water that just broke.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I heard a pop. And I have heard other women describe it like that as well. Like whether there is an actual like noise, I don't know. But so that was at 40 weeks, at 4 a.m. at 40 weeks. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I might be one of the 5% that gives birth on their due date. Anyway, that's just not what happened. I just was like leaking fluid for like 2 days or whatever. Then I had to prepare myself for all of the talk about infection risk, and I was, after 72 hours or something, I was told that they would recommend that I go to hospital. Like they would have to recommend that I go to hospital to be checked. And I was like, man, I don't want to do that. How am I going to have to like against medical advice that? And then they were like, oh, like maybe prepare like something that you can write on your against medical advice. And so then I'm like researching, Rachel Reed's post on prolonged rupture of membranes or whatever, about, when you go into labour after your waters have broken.
Which is not conducive with getting in a mental state to go into labour.
No, I was like, are you freaking kidding me that I'm having to do this? Yeah. I felt so annoyed. I was also quite annoyed because, I have so much respect and I'm so grateful for all of the amazing midwives that sign up and say, I will support home birth. But it also means that they're under a lot of pressure as well, like we already talked about. And, a lot of midwives, is my understanding, like actually do leave private practice because it's a bit too much. And this kind of situation, I guess, in Melbourne or this business meant that their second midwives were coming from like a pool of midwives. So I most likely would not know or never have met the second midwife. And because I'd had this experience with Murphy and the second midwife, I was then like, oh my God, it's going to happen again.
Yeah, naturally like worried about that. God, anyone would be.
Yeah. And so in the couple of weeks like leading up to Frankie's birth, I had been like, look, can I have like pictures? Can I have like names of like the midwives in this pool? And that felt like it was a big thing. And to their credit, like they did organize and they sent through it. And but it was so stressful and so anxiety provoking that, possibly also that my primary midwife wouldn't be able to be there because of like days off and things like that. And like I didn't know the other primary midwife. And anyway, it ended up being
pregnant lady doesn't need.
Yeah. And I just like if home birth was supported better, I think a lot of these issues would be solved because midwives wouldn't feel the pressure so much and they would be able to practice. There would be more midwives, more private midwives, so they wouldn't have, such stressful work conditions, I guess. It would make it more inviting to be a home birth midwife. But anyway,
big mentality shift needs to happen though.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was like on early Monday morning that my waters broke with Frankie, and I had Frankie on Wednesday evening, and it was on so early Monday morning my waters break. On Tuesday evening, the midwife that possibly would be my primary midwife that I'd never met before, her and my student midwife, I had an amazing student midwife throughout all of this who listened to all of my anxieties and all of my concerns and was absolutely amazing. And I say it with bias, but I would also always recommend a student midwife. Like you can always say, no, sorry, you can't come to the birth. But like, what have you got to lose? Because like having Chantel throughout my pregnancy and my birth was amazing. It was
Yeah.
the continuity of care that I really needed, because I felt, I hadn't had the chance to, coming into this experience at 20 weeks, like I'd already missed like lots of antenatal appointments, that ability to build that rapport with my midwife. But with like a student midwife, you get more opportunity because, they're more available. They're more keen to like text and check in and like go for a coffee.
They're
and
so eager.
yes, so eager.
I also had an amazing student midwife with me.
Yeah.
She's
Yeah. And so I really, and, Chantel and I are friends now. Like, she was the first person on this podcast. And, anyway, so her and the other midwife that was probably going to be my primary midwife, they rocked up and nothing was happening. They checked. They did like a Doppler and my blood pressure and whatever. Everything was fine. And then at midnight, I woke up and felt my first contraction, and that's, where the birth of Frankie, I guess, begins. I just felt like it was all intense, to be so honest. I like I said, I wish I could say that it didn't hurt and that I was so connected and I was so, but like it hurt. Like I feel like from, they say go back to sleep and whatever, and I tried to go back to sleep. I couldn't. Every contraction hurt.
Yeah.
I had my TENS machine.
If you look at it from the perspective of like, you look back on your pregnancy and how choppy and changey and like your care and then the stresses put on you in terms of potentially not having your primary midwife and who your second midwife was going to be and all of that, like that builds up your mental state as well. So, I mean, that'll probably contributed to it.
Yeah, those like couple of days before, especially with like this whole infection thing, and like I was confident. I was like, I will sign whatever. I'm happy to, like, I'm reading these stories that women are going into labor like 5 days or so after. And it's like, I'm happy to wait. If my baby is okay and I'm okay, then I trust that everything's okay. And I don't need to, go and be induced or whatever. Anyway, I feel like it hurt all the time. Yeah. I woke up like cooling at 5 or 6 o'clock because I was pretty bored in between contractions. Like the contractions were intense, but I was able to get through with them with my TENS machine and just by myself. But I guess I was just like, you can't. I might have had music on, but like, in the middle of the night, there's only so much you can do, I feel. And I was like cold as well because it was like winter. And my friend came and picked up Murphy at like 7 o'clock because ironically as well, like Murphy's Law, Murphy doesn't go to daycare on Wednesdays. So this was like, apart from the weekend, this was like the only day that we didn't have someone to care for. Like, he otherwise would have been in daycare. And I had
typical.
I would have liked him to be there, but I think it turned out for the best that, he ended up arriving like 5 minutes after Frankie was actually born that evening. But, I spent most of the day upstairs in my bedroom because it was too light downstairs, and I was so, I was only 40 plus 2 or 40 plus 3. And so in my mind, I was like, oh my God, if this labor stops, what's going to happen then? Because like my waters have already broken. Like if my labor stops, like what then? Yeah. And so I was like, this labor must go on. It must continue.
We must forge on.
We must forge on. And so I was so adamant that, dark, like make it the temperature I want, leave me alone, don't talk to me, don't touch me. I spent so, like, I'm looking at it now, I have marks on the door from where I had a bar stool chair. And every time there was a contraction, I would slam. I don't think I have any video footage of this, but I've heard other people explain it to me as well, my student midwife in Quinn. But I would like slam the chair against the wall every time I had a contraction. And I've like got all these marks on the wall. Yeah, so most of the time upstairs, and then in the afternoon, that midwife that I'd met the night before, who I had really connected with even in that 1 hour visit, she came and helped Kun with the pool, like set up the pool and everything. And I spent a lot of time in the pool, but I'd also requested, because with Murphy's birth, I had spent a lot of time super randomly squatting over a mop bucket. And so this time I was like, I don't want to squat over a mop bucket. Surely there's a birth stool somewhere. Yeah. And so I managed to convince my student midwife actually had seen in the corner of one of the appointment rooms like a birth stool being used to like stack things on. And
eager eyes. I love it.
And so I had requested if I could use the birth stool, and so I was very kindly allowed to use the birth stool, borrow the birth stool. And so I used the birth stool for a bit, and you know, went into the pool, and I spent time in the shower, but I didn't really like the shower. And yeah, lots and lots of position changing. I think like something that maybe, you know, if you've never had a labor before, or a vaginal birth or whatever, I don't think you understand how many positions you have to like go into. It's like an actual workout. Like you're squatting, you're stretching, you got your leg here, your leg there, you're on this side, on that side. Like you're doing all of the things.
And then you get to like 2 days after birth and you're like, oh, why are my legs so sore?
Yeah. Probably because you've just done like 100 squats.
Yeah,
like,
it's probably the mop bucket squatting.
Probably the mop bucket, yeah. Not just any squatting, but like deep squatting.
Yeah.
And yeah, I did spend a lot of time in the pool. I think on the birth stool, I started to feel, you know, at some point I started to feel like, is this like even going anywhere? Like, what am I think that fear started to creep in. Like, what if I can't do this? What if, you know, I've been doing this all day. I'm so exhausted. I've been awake since, you know, midnight. Like, what if I just can't do this? And I had said no VEs, no vaginal examinations, which was amazing. But I did my own VE, and when I did it, I could feel his head. And I remember saying like, oh my God, I can feel his head. Like during like the break between a contraction, I was like, I can feel his head. And that was the motivation I needed. I was like, oh my God, he's almost here. And
did your brain then just go, oh, I must just be in transition?
No,
I had that moment.
what I kept thinking was the Ring of Fire. When does the Ring of Fire happen? Because I remember that for Murphy, and I was when is it? And my brain, I guess I was like, that was in transition, because I couldn't think clearly. I couldn't think about my anatomy and where the Ring of Fire might be. And I was like, is that your cervix opening? I was like, no, that doesn't make sense, that the Ring of Fire is just cervix opening. And like, I remember thinking so many times, well, when is the Ring of Fire happening? When does that happen? Yeah. And especially after I'd felt the head, I was like, so when is that happening? Like, there's a head in like my vagina, and like, what?
Surely. Yeah.
What is happening here?
Come on, people.
And so, you know, once I said that I could feel the head, they said, oh, do you want to hop back in the pool? And again, like, I had not been focused on a like a water birth. I just wanted my baby. I didn't care if it was a land birth. Same with Murphy. Didn't care if it was land or water. I just wanted to have my baby. You know, I think like I was taught that the birth pool was a tool, and you can either use it or not use it. I never saw it as like an environment that, you know, you would or would not, I guess, give birth in. But, you know,
and I think you go one way or the other with that as well.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, either someone, because I was like hell or high water, 12 weeks pregnant, I'm having a water birth.
Yeah.
And I had a water birth because I was like, nah, that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. I'm so glad that they told me to get back in though, because I did have a water birth with Frankie, and I remember, like, again, transition brain or whatever brain, I remember like leaning over the edge of the pool and being like, man, an epidural would be nice. And I also remember thinking, if I do this again, I'm having a C-section. And I don't think you'll find many moms that home births say that. But like
probably thinking it though. Or potentially, I shouldn't say probably.
In my brain, I was just like, oh my God, this is the most painful thing. And I guess that's the work that I needed to do with this pregnancy. I needed to reconceptualize what pain was, because I had forgotten, because like with Murphy, I remember having Murphy and I remember being like, oh, it wasn't so painful. It was just extremely intense. But with Frankie, I associate it with pain. I'm like, that was painful. I'm not saying it was bad, because now I can reflect and be like, you know, I would never have changed anything. That was an incredibly healing birth for me. You know, Frankie, you know, his head came out and I could feel him. It's called restitute, like turn. And I have this video where I'm like, is that you touching me, like, to the midwife? And she's like, no. And like, you can see she's not touching me. And I was like, what the hell is that feeling? Because with Murphy, I was on the floor. It happened so slow, but also so quick. And quickly, with the water, it was just so slow and just calm. And then like the contractions, it feels like you're pushing against a brick wall. It feels like, it feels like you're pushing so hard, at least for me, and I could not feel anything moving. And then suddenly he was just out. Yeah. And like, you know, the midwife, I guess, like pushed him like between my legs, and I have this video of like pulling him up, and in the video I'm just saying like, I did it. Like, I did it. And it was, like that was magic. I'm so glad I have footage of that. And it's actually funny because in one of the footages before his whole body was born, you can hear me asking, is somebody recording this? And you can see
that my student midwife just stepped in and did it. I didn't ask anyone, but we have talked about it. Yeah. Because I have the same thing. The videos are just so cool to look back onto.
Yeah. Once you miss it, you miss it. Like, you can always delete it, but once you miss it, it's done. You'll never, ever get that back. And I have like 3 different angles of this birth.
Oh, yes.
But and, you know, the placenta, you know, Frankie was born, and then they were like, oh, you got to birth the placenta. And I was like, oh, of course. And so, you know, the lights were kept off. It was just like so much oxytocin, and just, it was just the most joyful, like, it was like being on drugs. Like, I imagine
so
that's, so euphoric. And I guess that's what I owe to birthing the placenta. And again, I have like photo proof of and video proof of this happening. Like 5 minutes later, the placenta came, like I birthed the placenta, like 5 minutes. And
undisturbed physiology.
yeah. And I had like gone in being like, this might take, like, I'm happy to wait up to an hour. But yeah, 5 minutes. And then we, went onto the couch, and Murphy came home when I was still in the pool, and he was like, so like a deer in headlights. He was like, what is happening?
What's going on?
Yeah, and especially because, we'd blown up the pool like earlier, and he wanted to get in it, and we're like, no, you can't play in the pool. We're not filling it up with water yet. And we laid on the couch and we cut the cord, and he was 4.6 kilos, and I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe this baby was bigger than Murphy.
Did you have any inkling, like in pregnancy or anything? Did you feel like he was any bigger or smaller? Or
I did not focus at all on that. I was like, I probably just have big babies.
Yeah.
I didn't want any growth scans. I was like, don't you dare measure him. I do not want to know. Nobody needs to know. My body makes babies the right size for me. And so I never, like, I felt big and whatever, but
you didn't like put any thought towards it necessarily. No, that's fine. I was just curious. It's always interesting.
I just had like a very small 1st-degree tear. I felt amazing in the days after. I was walking around like with Murphy. I like couldn't sit for like a week or maybe even 2 properly. I needed help to go to the toilet. I was so swollen. But with Frankie, I was literally up and walking about. Like on day 3, I went to a market. It was
complete
amazing.
Opposite.
Amazing, yeah. And
I got like goosebumps as you were like talking about it in the end there.
Yeah.
You're like, I don't know whether or not it's because I've, seen some photos from your birth in those moments where you've got him freshly in your arms, but it's just like, it's euphoric.
Yeah, euphoric is like a really good way to put it, because I just like, I'm so excited hopefully to share the birth video when my midwife hopefully approves it. But I just am saying like, I did it. And
it's crazy.
I'll never forget it.
Such a moment.
Yeah.
Aww.
But those are my birth stories.
Yeah. It's so nice that you had a journey that helped you heal from that.
I didn't even know that I needed to heal from it, but I feel, I work in mental health, and there's lots and lots of people out there that are going on their own like trauma journeys, like healing from all sorts of trauma. And I wouldn't say that my experience was traumatic, but it did affect me. It affected, my experience with Frankie in a way that I didn't even realize. But I felt like, wow, this must be what people feel like when they're, we talk about like recovery journeys in like mental health, and I was like, this must be what it feels like. I hope everybody can feel like this.
Like that aha moment, really.
Yeah. And I guess that's why I have this podcast, because I want to share all stories across the home birth spectrum, and
bring light to the journey and build that community as well. As you say, like, there's so many people that may or may not have people in their village that are going through the same journey. So if you can lean into others' stories, whether or not they're in your backyard or not, then it's going to be of benefit to people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Future families, future home birth families.
Exactly.